The markets have been an absolute free fall, and even though Bitcoin is still sitting around 87,000, if you were holding almost any other altcoin, whether it was Ethereum, Solana, Sui, or anything else, you're probably feeling some pain right now as we've watched these coins fall anywhere between 50 to 90% from their all-time highs just months ago. And even though you feel like probably just packing everything up and heading out, I'm going to beg you to stay because it's now important more than ever to stay informed in what's going on in the world of crypto. And it's because by staying plugged in, you're going to get a feel of when things start to shift to more risk on to be able to seize those opportunities and capture most of those gains and upside. It's also the perfect opportunity to get back to crypto airdrop farming. And if you're new here, I've made over $100,000 from crypto airdrops, and I've shared all of my strategies right here on this channel for free. And today we're diving into Sonic, which has launched one of the biggest airdrop campaigns I've ever seen, 200 million Sonic tokens, which equals about $115 million today. I'm going to give you a complete overview of the Sonic airdrop program and show you step by step a few different strategies that you can instantly start using. And the best part about the Sonic airdrop program, kind of given the state of the markets, is that we can use whatever assets we want right now. So whether that's we want to be in stablecoins, or we're okay with holding Ethereum and Bitcoin, or we want to buy the Sonic and the ecosystem tokens, right? There's strategies for all these different places. If you're not familiar with Sonic, I'm going to give you a super quick overview, and because fundamentally Sonic itself, while it is a new layer 1, it is actually rebranded from what was previously known as Fantom. In the world today, where we have all these new blockchains, everything from Movement Labs, Mega ETH, Sui, Barachain, right? The Fantom team really took a hard look at their blockchain and said, what do we need today to service the users of tomorrow, right? The use cases that we want to enable in this world. Instead of trying to do a few optimizations, they really went back to the whiteboard and from the ground up re-envisioned what a blockchain should look like. And so now what we have is Sonic, which is a high performant EVM that's a new layer 1. There's always a trade-off between performance and decentralization, and Sonic took the approach of really focusing on a high-performance layer 1, because today we have a lot of incredible technology that is focusing on the decentralization aspect. So they were able to really push the bounds of what is possible, looking at 400,000 transactions per second, which is really what's going to unlock things like real-time streaming use cases, payments, and many other things that Ethereum just couldn't do today. Something really innovative they've also done is they're going to share 90% of the fees that the Sonic blockchain generates with the developer ecosystem. So really trying to encourage new teams to come build on Sonic. If you look at many other layer 2 in blockchains today, teams take 100% of the fees and they keep it for their own treasuries and war chests, right? They have no intentions of sharing it with the builders, with the users of this ecosystem. So they really wanted to spin it on its head and give back 90% to people that make a blockchain so great. First, to get started, of course, we need to bridge to the Sonic ecosystem. And if you visit the official Sonic Labs site, you'll be able to select from a ton of different bridges to get you over here. Once you transfer some funds to Sonic, there's 3 main ways to earn points, which translate to your airdrop. The first is whitelisted. This is just holding assets in your wallet like MetaMask or Ravi. The second is going to be activity points, so actually interacting with different dApps on the ecosystem. And the third is something called Sonic Gems, which is applications that give away points to the users for using their specific application. If we look at the documentation, we can see all the different whitelisted assets. And right now they assign the highest boost to just holding stablecoins primarily in your wallet. We also have a 4x boost to holding variations of Sonic, Ethereum, and Bitcoin, and 2x for some other variations of Ethereum and Bitcoin. It's important to note though, they have called out that there are several flavors of each of these that will only earn activity points, meaning you hold these assets, but if you're just holding them in the wallet, you're not going to get points for those. You have to actually deploy them to ecosystem dApps. But anything not in this list is fair game. And so for example, USDC is not in this list. So if you wanted to hold just USDC in your wallet, you're going to get that 6x boost. You could literally set that up, set it and forget it, and come back in 3 months and claim your airdrop. Obviously, holding passive points is the easiest way to earn points, but it's also going to result in the less effective way to accumulate as many points as you can. Right now, we're only looking at a boost from the holding aspect. But when you actually start to create different strategies and deploy these, you'll see that the points significantly start to stack up. The second way to earn points is going to be deploying those assets, right? These are from activity points. And you can see here, it says users will earn activity points, which is 2x the amount of points compared to just simply holding them passively. So we're already seeing we're going to get double the points for simply just deploying those whitelisted assets. Now on their ecosystem page, all of these qualify for earning activity points. And you can see there are tons of different applications. What I've actually done is favorite a few of mine, and if you wanted to take a quick screen grab, you could. And we're going to go over some different strategies that leverage these different protocols to what I believe create some of the best strategies to get you the most yield. We talked about being able to earn points by holding assets in our wallet, adding them to different ecosystem apps, but we can also earn points through what's called a Sonic Gem. So this is really where they're kind of giving the allocation to different applications. And you can see here that each app will run its own independence points program and then entirely distribute at its own discretion. So if we actually go back to the ecosystem page, we can see who has the most gems right now. So on the Sonic Labs portal, we can see here right now the top 5 protocols that have the most gems. So Silo, Beats, Ring, SwapX, and Shadow. And with these gems themselves, they will essentially agree to distribute them to the users at their own discretion. So if we wanted to try to maximize our points, ideally we'd want to incorporate strategies that use some of these top applications as well. If you head over to X and drop me a follow, you'll get all my latest research in real time. And so I've actually done a write-up on several of these strategies, such as how to get points, how they're accumulated. You can see here I've outlined a strategy 1 using Silo Finance. I've talked about how you can hedge your positions with Hyperliquid, different ways to do strategies, including Pendle and Shadow. So there's a ton of information here. And so what I want to do today is walk you through a few different strategies that you can use step by step with you. The first strategy we're going to use is actually one of my favorites because it's just using stablecoins, but because you're touching so many different applications and compounding them, you actually get 20x the amount of points. So I've been using this strategy, and I got to give a shout out here to Johan, who put together this actually nice graphic for us to follow through today. So what this is saying here is that we are the user and of course can effectively lend USDC, which was a whitelisted asset, into Aave. And because of this, we get AUSDC. This is basically your receipt token, your IOU that helps you claim money out of the protocol. And what we can actually do is Pendle has opened up a liquidity provider pair using AUSD. And this is great for us because Pendle LP pools have zero impermanent loss. And so if we deposit into that, we then can actually double dip by depositing into Aave, taking our receipt token, depositing that into Pendle, and basically farming both protocols to double our points in this process. So let's walk through this end to end. The first thing we're going to do here is visit Aave, which is deployed on Sonic, and we're going to go ahead and supply some USDC. So I'll hit right now supply. I'm going to do about 100, and you can see here it looks like the cap is close to being full. So if it is full at any point, just be sure to check back on it and see when it would open again. But right now, since we're only deploying about 100, we can still make it in. So now that we deployed 100 USDC, we can see our balance here under the supply side. And the great part about this is we're actually earning 8% APY in terms of Sonic tokens, as well as 12x the Sonic points. And so what we're going to do now is integrate Pendle as the second part of this strategy. So if you go ahead and visit Pendle Finance and you click on pools, we're then going to search for AUSDC because that's what we have is our receipt token from Aave. And we're looking for this pool here, this top one with the Sonic icon that says it's going to mature in about 140 days right now. So when you open up this page, you're going to see a lot of different information. But if we scroll down a little bit to get some of the pool info, we can see here that this pool is earning 20x the Sonic points. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to zap in our 100 AUSDC that we got from depositing in Aave. And this is going to essentially provide it as liquidity into this pool. So what I'm going to do now is I put my 100 in here. I'm going to go ahead and zap it in. So now that we zapped it in, if we scroll down, we can click on my positions and we can see everything, right? So we have our LP for AUSDC. We have our APY of 7%, our position value, and of course, we're earning that 20x Sonic points. I did want to mention one thing because I don't want you to be nervous, but if you go back to Aave, you're going to notice that my balance is zero now. But why would it say zero if I supplied $100? And that's because the AUSD is essentially a receipt for this claim. So you've temporarily given up that claim to the Pendle protocol for that LP pair to help you earn those points. So in order to reverse this process, you would essentially exit the LP on Pendle, and then you would come back to Aave and claim it. And that's why it says zero at those time, because you don't hold those tokens in your wallet anymore. You deposited them temporarily into Pendle. For people who don't just want to stablecoin farm, but you actually want exposure to the majors like Ethereum or Bitcoin, you can actually come here to the official Sonic portal under the Earn section and go ahead and mint these Sonic native assets like SCUSD, ETH, and Bitcoin. What this is going to do is give you an activity points multiplier. So remember right now, not all assets earn you points by just holding them in your wallet. Only some assets you have to deploy them. So if we're going to deploy assets to some other protocols, we might as well use the ones that will give us the most points. The best way to earn the most points using these assets is to deploy them on Shadow. So Shadow is the #1 DEX on Sonic. It's a VE33 model, so extremely similar to Velodrome on Optimism chain or Airdrop on the base chain. And what we're able to do is use those assets that we mint them and pair them with other blue chips and earn an APY as well as high activity points. So for example, we just saw how we can mint SC ETH. And so if we're willing to just pair that with regular ETH, which would be a basically 0% impermanent loss, this is essentially the same as just holding traditional ETH, but we're actually going to get 12% APR and an additional 6 times activity points. So if you're like someone that doesn't want to do all these fancy strategies, doesn't want to overcomplicate things, the best way to get the most points is to just do something like pairing 2 same assets together, go ahead and get your 12% APR, and then you'll cash in on a lot of activity points. And we can see here, we have the same opportunity for the USDC pool, right? USDC and SCUSD. And this is going to get you 11x activity points as well as almost a 17% APR. You can see here there's a lot of different choices, including holding Sonic and USDC, Sonic and Shadow, other stablecoins. So there's variation of all these different activity points. And the best part about it, like I said, is that you'll find yourself getting a really nice APR while you're at it. And if you really just wanted to max farm points and just kind of remain delta neutral in some regard, you could always buy a bunch of ETH, deposit into this pool, and then theoretically on something like Hyperliquid, you can open up a 1x short. So that way you're kind of balancing out your delta neutral, and at the same time, you're just collecting mass points. You could do the same thing, for example, if you wanted to farm just Sonic. So this is a Sonic stake Sonic pair with this 8x multiplier. And so you could theoretically buy a bunch of Sonic coins, deposit it, and then open up a short on Hyperliquid to help balance you out. It's a little bit more complex and complicated, so I'm not going to necessarily walk through it here because there are a lot of risk involved. But if you're familiar with perps and shorts, then this should probably make sense to you and you could take that route if you wanted. The last strategy we're going to look at is using a project called Silo. And Silo, to many ways, is kind of similar to Aave. There is a lending and borrowing market. And the reason why we might look at Silo is because by far they have exponentially the most amount of Sonic gems, which is an opportunity for us to earn even an additional point on top of what is already passive points and activity points. I'm actually quite bullish on the Sonic token, and that makes using Silo a great strategy because you actually can earn what you can see Silo points. So markets that accept Sonic, you can see here you're going to earn 8x of Sonic points and then 2 Silo points. Well, for example, USDC, you do earn more Sonic points, but you earn half as much Silo points. So you really have to evaluate what's more important to you. Do I want to farm Sonic points, Silo, a bit of both, and then kind of go with that? But a perfect way to kind of leverage up this strategy is you can essentially do what's called a looping mechanisms. And this is very common with lending and borrowing protocols. The way that this would work is you would deposit Sonic tokens into this market and you're going to get 4.2% APR. And then you're going to essentially borrow stake Sonic. And you'll notice this is a 3.8% APR, which is great because that means we're getting paid more to supply than borrow. So when you do the math here, we're actually in the plus, in the positive still. What you could essentially do then with your borrowed stake Sonic, you would go to some place like Shadow that I showed you, a DEX aggregator, and you could swap that back for Sonic and then redeposit it and then just keep looping that process over and over. So let's actually walk through this end to end. So we've clicked on the stake Sonic pool. We'll click deposit and the Sonic token. And right now it has about 164 Sonic. So let's go ahead and deposit 163 worth. Awesome. We went ahead and deposited our Sonic. We can see here about $100 worth is 163 Sonic. So now let's go ahead and borrow against it. We can click this borrow tab and we want to borrow stake Sonic. So right now what we can do, if we can maximum borrow 152 Sonic. If when we do that, we can see our health factor drops super low. So I don't want it to be that low. Let's give ourselves about a 10% buffer here, just in case something tragic does happen here. So we can see right now we've deposited 163 Sonic. We borrowed 140 and our health factor is 10%. So if you get 0%, it means we were to be liquidated, which is never ideal. But because we're borrowing and supplying essentially what is the same assets, these prices should more or less be in lockstep. Of course, there's always risk. You should always be aware of that. But now let's show you the next step, how we can essentially redeposit these tokens we just borrowed back into the supply side and improve this health factor. What we need to do is come to a DEX like Shadow, and we're going to sell our stake Sonic back to regular Sonic. So now that we've done that, we actually now have, again, 144 Sonic. So we can actually redeposit that Sonic back into the same pool. And you can see here it increases our health factor dramatically from that 10% to 52%. So let's deposit this. Great. So now we can see initially we only started with that 160 Sonic, but now we've actually deposited 300 Sonic. And even though we borrowed 140, and the reason why you would do this is because we're earning points per dollar of Sonic we deposited, which means now we're earning twice as many points using the exact same capital by going ahead and leverage looping. And you could complete this anywhere from, I think, 10, 15, 20 times before it probably maxes out. And what I mean by max out is that your health factor gets way too low to manage anymore. But this is a great strategy to essentially increase capital efficiency in that regard. And to go ahead and exit this position, you would essentially unwind it. So you would do the exact opposite. You would come back here, you would withdraw, and then you would essentially reverse the whole position. Thanks for hanging out with me. And if you have any questions, come over to X, drop me a follow and send me a DM. Happy to help you with anything you've got going on. And be sure to follow because I share a ton of my research, like back on February 1st, 2 months ago, when I was welcoming everyone to Goblin Town as I expected the markets to start to take a nosedive as we were nearing a top here. So be sure to check the links below. Come join the completely free community Discord. But cheers, see you in the next one.